Hi, I'm Colton Carlson. I'm Dale's grandson. And I sat around for a long time trying to decide how I wanted to start this speech. I had a list of my grandpa's rodeo accomplishments in front of me, and I couldn't decide which I wanted to highlight first. But then I decided the place I really wanted to start was long after most of his rodeo achievements had been over. And that's this last Christmas. My sisters and I were digging through a back closet in my grandma's house, looking for some old VCR recordings of the NFR. But instead, we stumbled upon the Bell& Howell Autoload projector and a box of 8mm tapes beside it. So we fiddled around with the projector for a while, finally got it working, and sticked on the first tape, labeled Oklahoma 1966. This showed my grandpa down in Oklahoma roping cows with a bunch of his friends, 4 years before my dad was even born. And we thought that this was pretty cool, so we brought down the rest of the family, including my grandpa. And we all sat there in my grandma's basement with the lights turned off, huddled onto all the couches, watching the flickering images on the wall. And my grandpa narrated everything. He talked about the rodeos he had been to, the calves he roped, the people he knew, and the miles he had traveled. And we sat there for hours watching tape after tape until we hit the last one, labeled Home 1982. On that one, it showed my grandpa with my dad, now 12 years old, and my grandpa was teaching my dad how to leg down a calf back at their home ranch in Sawyer, North Dakota. I can't tell you nearly as much about my grandpa's rodeo career as I'd like to, but what I can tell you about is the effect his career has had on the lives of people around him. For as long as I can remember, going to Grandma and Grandpa's, it was a given that you threw a rope can in the back of the car, and my grandpa would set up a roping dummy out on the lawn, and we'd rope there for hours with him teaching us everything he knew. And later on, he'd saddle up one of his horses and pull around the dummy for us until it turned dark. And if it was too cold for that, he'd empty out the garage and he'd let us rope in there. He also taught us about how to be a cowboy. Because rodeo isn't a sport like football where you can go put on pads, practice for a couple hours, then take off the pads and you're no longer a football player and you can go home. For rodeo, you have to take care of the horses, take care of the cows, take care of the farm, build up the arena, work up the ground, and only then can you practice. And as soon as you're done, you've got to take care of the horses, take care of the cows, take care of the farm, and do it all over again. He taught us that being a cowboy isn't a right. It's something you have to work for, and it's something that you should be thankful you have the opportunity to work for. He also taught us about horses, and about the importance of having a good horse if you want to do anything in the rodeo world. He always said that us Carlsons are too small to tie cows without a good partner behind us, and that's been one of the best words of advice that I've had. Because me, like my dad before me and my grandpa before him, I consider calf roping my main event. And it helps to be big, but I've always been one of the smaller guys there. And that was even more pronounced for my grandpa, who was smaller than me, and for those of you who don't know, they were not nearly as nice to calf ropers back in his day. One of my favorite pictures in their house, they have up in a back room, and it shows my grandpa. He's just roped a calf, he's pitched his slack, and his feet are on the ground. The calf's just hit the end and it's coming over on its back legs. My grandpa's running down the rope, looking up to the calf about like this. And I always look at that and I think if I were in that position, I'd be pulling out my knife, cutting the rope, and trying to get the hell out of there as fast as I could. But instead, he ran down and he thrived in that environment, not because he was more physically gifted, but because he learned to train horses better, work harder, and because he was straight up tougher than everybody else. And that's why I think he should be in the Cowboy Hall of Fame. He'll teach you everything he can with words, and he'll teach you the rest by example. He's taught me, my dad, and hundreds of other college kids in his years traveling with my grandma to college rodeos, not only how to work better, or how to rope better, but more importantly, how to be a cowboy. He's been a great competitor, a great teacher, a great ambassador for the sport, and a great cowboy for over 60 years. And if that's not what you want in the Cowboy Hall of Fame, I don't know what is.
Good morning. My name is Harvey Billadeau, and I'd like to offer my support to Dale Carlson in his induction to the North Dakota Hall of Fame. I've known Dale for 50 plus years. He's a great competitor. He's been an amazing ambassador for the sport of rodeo in North Dakota. As a young cowboy, when I got started, Dale's one of the people I looked up to. I was 16 or 17 years old getting started, and he was winning everything. His advice and his support was tremendous. He was a very deliberate roper, real methodical, rode good horses. In the early 60s, when they had the Match of Champions at Sentinel Butte, Dean Oliver matched Bob Wiley. And guess what? They both rode Dale's horses. That speaks a lot for it right there. In the early 70s, Sonny Eyre matched Dean Oliver. He rode Dale Carlson's horse to win that match. He was competitive at the amateur, professional level all across the region. He won 2 NDRA championships, 1964 and 1966. The days of getting off the left, I thought Dale Carlson did it better than anybody. So I tried to probe his mind a little bit. How do you do that? How do you step off the front of them horses and be under the rope in one jump? And he just looked at me and said, Harv, the future's getting off the right. And if I were you, that's where I'd stay. And I thought that was pretty good advice. I don't know if Dale ever did get off the right very much, but he got off the left so well he didn't have to. He also competed in the team roping, the senior breakaway later in the RRA, the Rough Rider Association. Won a lot of championships in the 80s and the 90s. He was a very successful competitor. He was also a quality stock contractor when stock was hard to get. Spent a lot of years providing timed event stock to the amateur rodeo associations in North Dakota. All through the 80s, he was a well-respected rodeo judge for 20 years. I mean, here I am a kid. I got to go beat him. Then I got to rope his cattle. Now he's going to judge me. This guy's done it all. I had the opportunity to serve on the board of directors with Dale on the RRA, and I think he served there for 23 years. Dale Carlson has devoted his life to the sport of rodeo. He and his wife Mary have been involved with the Rough Rider Association for over 35 years. They raised 2 children who were also champions and have grandchildren following in their steps. Dale was a high school champion calf roper. His son was a high school champion calf roper. And this young man that was just up here is a high school champion calf roper. That speaks a lot, doesn't it? 3 generations, that's pretty amazing. Dale and Mary's lifelong commitment have helped shape a generation of cowboys and cowgirls. North Dakota's really lucky to have such devoted individuals. And it's nice to have the Cowboy Hall of Fame. It's nice to have award banquets, passing out buckles and saddles, but it's all those people behind the scenes that really make this whole thing work, isn't it? And these people have spent their life doing it. I think Dale Carlson would be an excellent addition to the North Dakota Cowboy Hall of Fame. Thank you.